morning. It is Thursday, April 16, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the foreign ministers of the G7 meet in the German city of Lübeck to discuss Middle East security concerns and the Ukraine. The European Union formally charges Google with antitrust violations, opening the door to a $6 billion lawsuit. And later on the show, Israel marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, while thousands march in Auschwitz. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with the G7 Foreign Ministers Summit in Lübeck, where foreign ministers ended talks after just less than 24 hours in the northern German city. Now, the meeting intended to set the groundwork for the G7 summit of heads of state and government in Bavaria in June, but the main focus over the past 2 days, four ministers from the US, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Japan, and Canada, has been the conflict in eastern Ukraine and, of course, the situation in the Middle East. The focus in the Middle East issues dealt mostly with the framework agreement signed with Iran nearly 2 weeks ago. The G7 stated that an Iran without nuclear weapons is the ultimate goal. The group also implored the government in Tehran to help bring an end to the conflicts in Syria, Yemen, by finding a political solution. Houthi rebels in Yemen, who are believed to be backed by Iran, are in open combat with a military coalition led by neighboring Saudi Arabia, which intervened on behalf of Yemen's official government. Now, the G7 countries also made clear at the talks in Lübeck that they stood firmly behind Yemen's President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi, who fled the presidential compound in Aden last month to the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The G7 advocated a national unity government for the country, of course, again, though stressing that the Middle East was one thing that was main on their agenda. And to further discuss this and more, we are joined in studio by Channel 2 Foreign Affairs Senior Editor Arad Neil. Arad, good morning to you.
Good to be here.
And by I-24 News Senior Middle East Analyst Ali Waqid. Ali, good morning to you. Before we break it down, let's take a look at the latest from Lübeck.
German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said Ukraine, Iran, and the Middle East were at the top of the agenda at the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting in Lübeck on Wednesday. Steinmeier spoke out against Russia's decision to deliver missile systems to Iran. This meeting coincides with politically sensitive negotiations on a final accord between Iran and the United States, Britain, France, Russia, Germany, and China on Tehran's disputed nuclear program.
Looming large is the challenge of finishing the negotiation with Iran over the course of the next 2.5 months.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini indicated she was optimistic that an Iran deal on nuclear arms would get through the U.S. Congress.
Not only the U.S. leadership that is very much committed, but also the U.S. Congress will understand that this agreement is an agreement in the interest of the security of everybody in the region and worldwide.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was not invited to the foreign ministers' meeting due to Russia's actions in Ukraine, which led the G7 to suspend Russia's invitation to the talks. Steinmeier said many international conflicts cannot be solved without Russian involvement, but Moscow needed to move towards solving the Ukraine crisis before it could be included in such meetings again.
There's no interest on my part, or as far as I know anyone else's, in pursuing a policy of containment or even isolation of Russia. We would very much like to have conditions in which Russia could again be part of the G8 and take part in meetings. But it remains the case that the path to that leads through the implementation of the Minsk Agreement and resolving the Ukraine conflict and fulfilling the obligations that Russia has taken on for itself.
The police presence in Lübeck was high ahead of the G7 foreign ministers meeting. Several small protests had been held throughout the city on a Stop 7 demonstration that gathered around 1,800 people.
Also joined via Skype from London by I-24 News European correspondent Jonathan Sachadati. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
The G7 meeting concluding in Europe. At the end of the day, the two main things on the agenda were what?
Well, originally the group were meeting ahead of their summit that's coming up in June, but the foreign ministers from US, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada were meeting there to discuss eastern Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East predominantly. Also up for discussion, though, were the ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran, the spread of ISIS, increasing instability in Yemen, the lack of peace talks in the Middle East, and also Africa. So there was plenty on the agenda there, and you could hear from the statements after the meeting exactly what progress they made in certain of those different areas.
What progress would that be?
Well, the German foreign minister welcomed the decision by the UN Security Council, which placed an arms embargo on Houthi rebels in Yemen, but said that we are far away from a situation in which we're able to calm that situation, to de-escalate or find a political solution. So not essentially much hope there. Also discussed were climate change, challenging stability in Africa, he said, and maritime security. But he also commented on Russia, saying that there's no interest in isolating Russia, but Russia could only really expect international sanctions against it to be lifted only when it complies with the terms of a ceasefire with Ukraine. And the foreign ministers from the group of 7 countries all agreed on these points.
And these points, and I think sanctions lifted and immediately, and then people brought to the table is something that we're going to be hearing a lot over the course of the next several months leading up to June. But Jonathan, you're staying with us. Let's break this down for a second. Arad Nir, Senior Foreign Affairs Editor of Channel 2, Russia not at the table still, and Ukraine still being discussed there, but Russia not at the table spells what in this context?
Well, sanctions, that's the word. Lots of sanctions were discussed there in Lubeck around the beautiful buildings that we've just seen in the report, a total contrast to the battlefields that are being discussed in the agenda. Nonetheless, we used to call this organization the G8 for so many years. And eventually they became G7 again. This is part of the sanctions against Russia because of the invasion into Ukraine. As we heard earlier by Jonathan and in the report, one of the points that were discussed is how to bring Russia back into the G7 in order to make it G8 again, maybe even before June, when the leaders of the 7 states, be it 8, will be meeting again. But the condition is that the Minsk agreement will be fully implemented. Mind you, Yael, I must say that it seems that the Minsk agreement is being implemented, not to its full extent, but we see that the sanctions are working. The Russians are more restrained, are more constrained, and maybe
even
there
though we
is
see
a glimpse
constant
of
fighting,
change.
I mean, we are seeing constant fighting in
we
the Ukraine.
are seeing local skirmishes recently, in the recent weeks. And some observers would claim that the Minsk agreement seems to be working, that the sanctions are deterring the Russians, and maybe there's another hope for President Obama in one of his international agendas that were being forwarded, trying to avoid an implementation
of the force.
Yeah, the sanctions may be deterring the Russians, but the Russians sent in the last days 2 important messages. The lifting of the embargo over the sale of S-300 missiles to the region, mainly to Iran. And the second message was the abstention in the Security Council resolution regarding Yemen, and Russia said that there is the G7. They would like to be part of the G8, but nobody is going to dictate Russian foreign policy. Russia is still deeply and actively involved in the Syrian crisis. Russia is adopting the Iranian position vis-a-vis the crisis in Yemen, and Russia is showing no flexibility in supporting its interest or its allies in the Middle East. And I think when the G7 are adopting the pan-Arab coalition position against Iran position, it will deepen the crisis, and it will not contribute to the solution. For the moment, the key is in the hands of Iran. Iran will be relatively limited until end of June to complete its agreement with the international community regarding the nuclear file. And this is the mission of Russia and Iran, that for the moment we are keeping things at a low flame. We don't want to escalate the diplomatic situation, and of course on the ground. But once the Iranian released and freed from the agreement, if it will be concluded in June, Iran will feel more free to have a very active role in Yemen.
I totally agree with what Ali just said, but Ali referred to Russia's involvement in Iran and in Yemen. These are not the conditions to bring Russia back to the G8.
It's the Minsk.
It's the Minsk agreement only that was set as a condition to bring them back to this family of nations, if you want, or to this intellectuals club that so many people are seeking to join. So it's the Minsk agreement, it's the Ukraine, and the other disputes can be discussed there should Russia join the table again.
Yeah, but Russia, I mean, I'm assuming that also for, and Jonathan Sachadati helped me out with this, Russia is needed at that table. It's all actually leading up to June. Okay, leading up to June, where the G8, 7 or 8 are going to be meeting, and June is also where the agreement with Iran is supposed to be finalized. And I'm assuming the two of those are interlaced. And Jonathan, was there any reaction from Russia or any kind of statements coming out in the last several days when it comes to that, when it comes to those issues?
Well, this is it. I think that, you know, what we're talking about there, as you've just heard in the studio, the discussion you're having, is the idea that this is just dependent on Russia's behavior regarding Ukraine. But as it can be seen, you know, concern over Russia's decision to sell missiles to Iran while the negotiations regarding the nuclear program are still ongoing somehow showed that really there is a bit more to it than is officially being said. The German foreign minister said that these steps could be misunderstood by one side or the other. So there's this sort of euphemistic language that somehow there's a lack of understanding of what's going on. And yet, while we wait for those nuclear talks to be concluded in June, and while we see so much criticism coming from all over the world, not least from Israel, we can understand how Russia's taking that opportunity once again to perhaps exploit what some see as a weakness in the Western position on what's going on vis-a-vis Iran and the nuclear threat, in order to continue acting in quite a bold way, so that, yes, it's being excluded from this meeting, but nonetheless, it's still pursuing its foreign policy goals in a way that is actually quite terrifying to some in Europe and the rest of the world, and nothing seems to be stopping it. And
speaking of, speaking of, Ali, what you just mentioned, when it comes to Russia not being at the table, but Iran being one of these big issues, or the big looming, elephants in the room. The G7 yesterday, the both of you were mentioning Iran many times in their statements. Welcoming that UN resolution about the Houthi forces, etc., etc., calling on Iran to actually help Yemen resolve, the issues within. What does that spell to you, Ali, that, that the G7 or /G8 know how much Iran is needed in resolving all these conflicts?
Exactly. It reflects the fact that no matter how we like or do not like the regime in Iran, there is a unanimity among the international community that Iran is a key player in the region. Iran should be a key partner, and Iran is a key in order to reach stability in the region. For the meanwhile, Yael, the West and mainly the United States is trying to still play the double game in Iraq. They are supporting the Iraqi government that is an ally of Iran, and in Yemen they are supporting the Arab coalition that is fighting against the allies of Iran. But if we should sum this issue, is still support of the international will of the international community led by the United States to see Iran once again integrated in the international community, to see Iran a key player in the region, and this is why I think the resolution in the UN was was more restrained, to the eyes of the Saudians. The Saudians wanted to see a very large embargo. The Saudian hinted that should be taken sanctions against external forces that are involved directly or indirectly in the Yemeni crisis.
And Rodney, just, in your expert opinion, because we're listening to Ali, and just looking at these, the bits and pieces on the chessboard, it seems like the United States, and we've been saying this for months, have picked a player in the region. It seems like they have picked Iran. This is going to be happening irrespective of what other forces in the country think. If Iran is such a key player in this region and is picked as such, what does this spell? Let's ask, what does it spell for this country, for example?
Firstly, if you ask what it spells for this country, you mean Israel.
Right.
We can look at the Laurent Fabius, French Foreign Minister, statement yesterday, in which he said that he hopes that after the achieving of agreement with Iran by the end of June, there'll be time to implement an agreement vis-a-vis the Palestinians. So, firstly, it proves to you or to us why there is so much reluctancy within the Israeli government to see this agreement coming to terms, coming forward, because then the international community will have time to deal more intensively with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Regarding the US and Iran, this is part of what is being called these days the Obama doctrine. Obama's way and Obama's policy to solve problems without boots on the ground, without military force. And I think that Obama realizes, exactly as Ali just said, that the Iranians are the key player in this region. They are not the nice player, they are not the beautiful queen of the region, but they fiddle around. And in order to solve the conflict, you have to deal with the devil. They are the devil that there is, and he's dealing with them. And you can like it and you can not like it, but this is the fact.
But it's happening.
In order to avoid another war, you have to discuss the situation with Iran. That's
and
the way
to continue, last sentence, Yael, to continue, Arad, he mentioned Laurent Fabius, and what will go, and the mood in which the talks regarding Iran will go, it will impact the French initiative in the Security Council regarding the Israel and the timing of the initiative to be presented to the Security Council in the coming days.
In the coming days. Thank you both for being with me on this issue as we move along. Something completely different, yet fascinating. The European Union's competition commissioner accused American search giant Google yesterday of cheating competitors by distorting internet search results in favor of its Google shopping service. Not that shocking. In a statement, the group's leader said the company's conduct infringes EU antitrust rules and harms consumers. Google immediately responded by dismissing the allegation, but has 10 weeks to file an official response. If found at fault under EU antitrust rules, the company faces a fine of up to 10% of its annual sales. In Google's case, roughly $6 billion. Remember, though, that's just 10% of its annual sales. The Commission also announced a separate investigation into Google's mobile operating system, Android, and the Commission's head announced the move is on the eve of a high-profile visit to the United States, following 5 years of investigation and abortive efforts to strike a deal. A final resolution is likely to take many months and probably years. Still, though, a fascinating turn of events. To help us make sense of it all, we are joined in studio by advocate Jonathan Klinger.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Specializes in cyber law. And still with me, of course, Foreign Affairs editor Arad Nir and Jonathan Sachadadi in London. First, let's take a look at the following report that recaps the latest events on the saga and break it down from there.
Over $6 billion. That's the penalty Google could pay after the EU Competition Commissioner, Margaret Vestager, outlined the Commission's preliminary view and said the U.S. tech giant has been sent a statement of objectives, effectively a charge sheet against the Internet titan.
That Google's favorable treatment of its comparison shopping service, you probably know it as Google Shopping, is an abuse of Google's dominant position in general search. Google now has 10 weeks to respond.
The Commission can fine firms up to 10% of their annual sales, which in Google's case could amount to billions of dollars. If it finds the companies are abusing a dominant market position, the EU regulator can demand a change in their business practices, as it did with U.S. software giant Microsoft in 2004 and chipmaker Intel in 2009.
This is of our initial investigation. The Commission also today have launched a formal in-depth investigation of Google's conduct as regards the mobile operating system Android, apps and services.
Google said in a written statement it strongly disagreed with the European Commission, saying the search results displayed for shopping queries had not harmed the competition, and partner agreements with mobile operators were voluntary. However, the Commission did not address all the complaints lodged by competitors in Europe and the United States. A final resolution, possibly involving court action if Google chooses not to settle, is likely to take many months and probably years.
Jonathan Sashadati in London. Obviously, this is not as exciting as the royal birth, but still, when it comes to the European Union, a move as such after so many years. Okay, how much can, first of all, how much power was behind this investigation, and can this, do you think, actually put a dent in Google?
Well, we've got to remember a few facts here. 9 out of 10 searches done in Europe online are done on Google. And
yes,
like you and me, most people probably trust Google when they do web searches. So this is a pretty huge allegation that Google is actually gaming or playing those searches so that it can prioritize and promote its own shopping services in those searches.
Yep.
And the company has that 10-week time to respond, but it's said already that it disagrees with those charges. Now, in terms of how realistic this is, let's also remember that in 2006, the European Union and, in fact, Argentina put into practice what they called the right to be forgotten, which forced Google to stop listing certain search results after individuals claimed they had the right for certain links about them on the internet to be forgotten.
Right.
That was actually from a particular case where one man went bankrupt, and every time people searched for his name, this article about his old historic bankruptcy was coming up, and this had an effect on his day-to-day life. He said he had a right to be forgotten. Now, that has been put in place, and Google's actually had to accept applications from people online for certain specific links to be forgotten about them. They've had to put in place some sort of assessment of all of those links, and it's because of that EU decision, that European law, that they should do that. So this is quite a big deal. And now with the EU accusing Google of distorting search results in order to prioritize its own shopping services in its comparison searches, there is the potential for something quite explosive here.
No, and Advocate Advocate Klinger, I'm just asking you, well, Jonathan, as Jonathan mentioned here, there was in the past in 2006, clearly a lawsuit against Google did put a dent in, did make changes within that company.
The Gonzalez case, it's not 2006, it's 2014 actually. It's Mario Costeja Gonzalez. It's a case where a guy went bankrupt, did put a dent in Google, but it's not actually in a EU directive or law. Google changed some of its practices, but we have to remember here something.
Okay.
Let's go back to the Microsoft case. It was around 10 years ago. Microsoft gave its operating system Windows with Internet Explorer,
right,
the browser. It was highly popular, 95% market share, and the EU started seeking action against Microsoft. Since then, after these sanctions, the market share dropped. Now Google's Chrome is the most used browser, but let's see the differences. Back then, the Antitrust Commission and everything was against something that was being sold and bundled with a free item.
Okay.
Now Google has a very big advantage over the Microsoft case. Google's search services are actually not sold. They're not something that people pay for. So they can say, well, it's a market share, but we give this out for free. Another thing, if we go to Android, the other thing that the EU is seeking action, Google says, well, it's not only that we give Android for free, we give you the source code, so every manufacturer, even if he doesn't sign an agreement with us, can take this, change it, put in whatever he wants. If you want to put Microsoft Search inside, you can do so. So Google comes with a better position than Microsoft, which was unharmed legally from the whole EU
but the
actions.
Explorer died.
Explorer died not because of the EU sanctions. It died because it was not as good as the competition later on. Microsoft didn't update Internet Explorer between Explorer 6 and Explorer 7 for something like 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So the better technology survived. Here in Google's search, we see that Google might have intervened, but it's something that they give out for free, and they state that it is affected by other criteria such as who pays us. It's like saying that when you go shopping at a certain department store and you ask the girl, where can I find a jacket? She'll tell you, well, you can go next door to the next department store because they have cheaper jackets.
Okay.
Will this be something that you see going on? I'm not concerned. Google are highly educated.
No.
They learned the lessons of the past. They sat on the other side when they sanctioned against Microsoft, where they went to be the leader. And technology comes in waves. 10 years ago it was Microsoft, now it's Google. 2 years from now it will be Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Companies boom, companies die. Nothing changes. It's the same story.
No, I understood almost all of it, I have to say, the technical bit. But when it comes to Google being, I'm just looking at it, everybody's looking at this lawsuit, oh my God, Google's being touched. Google being the actual, the big corporations, the leaders of the world at this day and age, but we are forgetting that a lawsuit is such, as Advocate Klinger has just said, $6 billion is nothing for a company like Google, right?
It's a drop in the ocean.
A drop in the ocean, yeah.
Just for our viewers' sake, Yael, with your permission, let me give you an example. What is Google accused of?
Thank you.
They are, if you are looking for a hotel, let's say you are going on vacation, you are looking for a hotel in the city you've chosen, Google is accused for promoting the hotel they have interest that you would go and visit. Now, Google is not a philanthropist. Google is a commercial company. Now, they cannot be accused for doing it, but this is exactly the place of the regulatory bodies in such organizations, like huge organizations like the European Union, that have to regulate the market for the benefit of the little consumer. So everything has to be transparent. The problem with Google is that this promotion for your hotel is not transparent. You think that this is the best hotel that you've been looking for, but this is not. It is the hotel that Google wants you to go because they would benefit out of it.
Right.
So here is an ultimate example for the need of regulatory bodies in order to promote the sharks of the free market.
Which sadly, in the short time we have, regulation, I think, on the internet is something that is yet to be cracked in so many ways. I want to thank you both, and Jonathan as well in London. Sadly, all the time we have. When we get back, a new report reveals that 15% of all cancer cases in Haifa, in Israel, are due to severe air pollution in the area. We'll take a closer look at the meaning of that finding. First, though, some more of the morning headlines. Good morning. It is still Thursday, April 16th, 2015. It is your morning edition on I-24 News, the place you must be every morning because it's the only place. Ami Kaufman joins me.
Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Ami. With the news you missed while scanning the headlines, with us in studio also the lovely and amazing Netta Achitov. I'm introducing you just so you can jump in and people don't think, who are you?
Who's this blonde
just
in
this
our
blonde,
studio?
the other blonde in the studio. Ami, the news we missed while scanning the headlines.
Right. Okay, let's go with another quick update with Iran, as usual.
No, which I think we'll be doing over the course of the next three. Exactly. Over the course of the next 3 months.
Yesterday we updated that the Democrats and Republicans reached a compromise on how to review the bill that will be about the Iran nuclear deal that Obama achieved. It's going to last 52 days, as we said, 30 days in Congress that they'll review. He'll have 12 days to veto it, and then 10 days to override that. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani actually discussed this and said that he's not really concerned about Congress. as we see here in
That's
the Hill.
fabulous, I
He
gotta
says,
say.
yeah,
Okay, no.
in a speech yesterday that he gave to a really huge crowd, he said what the U.S. Senate and Congress and others says, it's not our problem. We're in talks with major powers and not with Congress.
You know what? I mean, and this is to all the, you're not that as old as us, Netta, I have to say, at this table, but what is fascinating to me about this, and we'll be seeing this over the course of the next 3 months, something happens in the States, and immediately the response comes from Iran, be it because we live in an internet age, it feels like a discussion.
It's a discussion. They're
It's a discussion. They're talking constantly,
they're talking.
including with us.
Right, over the waves, over the airwaves.
Bingo,
right.
over the waves.
And one more thing that's important is that he said that they would not consent to any deal that does not provide immediate relief from economic sanctions. They're really pushing the
button
pedal
on that one constantly. A very good point. Yeah.
Some possibly good news coming out from Yarmouk, which has been in really bad shape.
Cautiously optimistic.
From the Daily Star, Lebanese Daily Star, reports that ISIS, after they moved into the camp about a month ago, is supposedly withdrawing from the camp. We heard about massacres, about rape, about beheadings, about mass starvation. But Daily Star is saying that they've left the camp and they left pretty much Nusra Front kind of in charge. They're usually enemies, Nusra and ISIS, but they have a shared enemy, which is a Hamas-linked Aknaf al-Maqdis. And this is the time that they kind of cooperated to defeat
it's so hard to keep
al-Maqdis.
track of the proxy wars going on in the Middle East at this point. But irrespective of that, the tragedy of the people of Yarmouk, if this is a sliver of relief,
hopefully they can have some kind of breather, or
get people out,
get people out.
in.
Exactly, get aid in. That's what we're hoping for.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton, back to the States again, but Hillary Clinton with...
Sorry, the blondes in the street going, yes.
You might know, I used to be blonde, by the way, but that's okay, sorry. Hillary Clinton, who announced her presidency this week, her video was very talked about, a lot, and it was showed...
Wait, hold on, stop, discussion.
Right.
It was very good.
Really?
I was emotional.
You liked it?
Towards it. Yeah, I was.
Well,
maybe I'm sarcastic.
I think when she says emotional, one of the emotional parts I think was the scenes of gay couple holding hands.
That to me was the favorite part.
And
now, if this is your favorite part,
baby and
but the lady with the baby we know from every election campaign. She was to me a little bit, I don't know. It was a little.
And they all looked like very strong. She empowered them, I felt.
Yes,
she wasn't condescending.
She was like, it's like if you're doing good,
she's like, you're strong. The people of America.
Clearly a fan.
Caught me.
I think you liked the video.
Yeah, I think you did. Okay.
So the video was showed on a Russian TV channel, but they put an 18+ stamp on it because because it's supposedly for mature audiences, because it fears it might run afoul of the country's anti-gay propaganda law.
Probably. I'm sure it's not because of Clinton wearing cleavage.
It's not the 18+ or oh my God. Okay.
So apparently the channel CNN asked them, and they told them that they were really scared that they might be breaking the law. So they took they just didn't want to take any chances.
Russia. From Russia with love to you.
From Russia to Britain and to football. The Liverpool Football Club.
Wow.
During halftime, one of the fans, named Stephen Dodd, took a picture of two Muslim men praying in one of the halls just outside with one of the kids of the people praying. And he took a picture of them and he put it on Twitter. And this is the caption that he wrote on Twitter: "Muslims praying at halftime at the match yesterday, #disgrace."
Oh.
So this caused an uproar on Twitter, and Liverpool is supposedly going to take action against them because the police, the Merseyside police, isn't going to do anything. They say Liverpool can take care of it. But this is a really big deal on Twitter.
No, I'm sure, and the fact that it's not that surprising that that racism, insanity is trickling into football, because that's what football fans do.
Yeah.
In some ways, but it's
it's amazing that this is all because of a hashtag.
All because of a hashtag disgrace. One word.
It's not even the title or anything else.
Just one word, and it went on fire.
The age that we live in. Definitely the age that we live in.
Do we have time for some more?
Yes.
There was a big sentencing yesterday, an ongoing scandal of Atlanta school teachers who are going to jail because they cheated. They hiked up the scores of their students.
Why did they do that?
Well,
I mean, why weren't I?
In the states, there's a federal.
Not in that school?
In the states, there's a federal law called No Child Left Behind law. It's a series of tests that schools have to take, and these schools have to reach certain standards. They have to get certain grades,
right.
And if they don't reach these grades, they're not exactly penalized, but schools might not get as much funding. Schools might get closed. Teachers might get fired. There's a lot of pressure from the system on the schools and in turn onto the teachers afterwards.
And onto the students.
And of course onto the students.
My nieces are totally stressed about it.
Exactly.
It's like a whole month that are
just the grades.
So this isn't the first case that this has happened because of this law, but this was massive. This is about half of the schools in Atlanta. 35 people were indicted. 35 teachers were indicted. Most of them took plea deals, but 8 decided not to. The judge did not like this. Some of these teachers are going to jail for 7 years.
For 7 years?
7 years. And the uproar is about this harsh sentencing might be just a bit too much for teachers.
I mean, it's very harsh, but I have to say, I'm just thinking of, because we're all parents at this table, I'm thinking of, you know, the culture and mentality of grading worldwide, which is very problematic. And as you mentioned, you know, No Child Left Behind, that said, you know, be it in Europe, be it, you know, in the Middle East where we're sitting in Israel, the same thing. It's the grading that seems to be, not degrading, but the grade itself that seems to be what is motivating both teachers ethically and children, irrespective of how you get to that grade. And that's the frightening thing. So, I mean, I don't think that sentencing is normal. I don't think it should be 7 years, but it should be. It should be put in place.
Can you imagine the pressure that a teacher is under that makes him take a test of a kid, take an eraser, and physically erase answers and put in new correct answers? That person must be under a lot of pressure to get some results.
No, very much so.
Is there a debate about the system?
There's a large debate. There's a large debate about the system, about that specific law, about maybe it should be changed. But today it's all about that sentencing and about 7 years in jail and seeing teachers on TV being handcuffed.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
How do their students, you know, feel?
I was wondering how the students feel. They're like, well, thank you for that A, and see you in 7 years. I
don't know if we have time. One more quick one. There were some strikes yesterday of thousands of workers who work in the food industry, in the fast food industry, who are demanding $15 an hour wages, mostly against McDonald's.
Sorry.
What's different about this protest? What's different about this protest? These protests have been going on for about 2 years already, but this one was huge. It was over almost 230 cities across the states. It even spilled over the pond into Europe, in front of McDonald's, places in Athens, Toronto, Sao Paulo, and Hong Kong. And even Robert Reich, the former education minister of the states, took part in it.
If you're a global network, you should expect a global,
there you go. That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah, you're in the right place for that one. Ami, thank you. You stay with us. Get locked in.
I'm here.
As we move along. There we go. Moving on to our next topic, during a recent meeting on building plans for the northern Israeli port city of Haifa, a health ministry representative exposed alarming details about high rates of cancer brought about by heavy pollution in the heavily industrial city. Now, according to the report, between the years 1997 and 2008, the cancer contraction rate of residents of the area was 16% higher than the rest of the country. For lung cancer, the rate was nearly 30% higher than the Israeli average. Some 780 cases of cancer in the Haifa Bay area, including 30 children out of a total of 60 who suffered from cancer, were related to exposure to air pollution. The situation in Haifa is not unique to Israel, and it highlights the prevalent tensions between the need for livelihood in the form of jobs and the desire for a healthy environment. We are joined in studio by Netta Achitov to help us shed light on this story. Essentially, you know, well, first of all, tell me about this report and how much of an uproar is it causing?
So it was supposed to be a minor report by the ministry of, the health ministry, just for another cause. And then all of a sudden it became, it exploded in the newspapers. All the titles are 50% of, Haifa cancers are due to air pollution. The mayor is panicked. He's going, from one studio to another to talk how Haifa is a good place to live in. It's really, this is like the conflict, the human conflict in a nutshell.
Can they really trace, though, the spike of, cancer cases to pollution in studies, and can they make that correlation?
This is a really, really good question, because this is the question that people are dealing with in the past decade.
Worldwide,
yes,
actually,
worldwide. And finally, they are able to, to connect between two kinds of cancers, which is lung cancer and bladder cancer and air pollution. All the rest, it's not clear right now. It's very hard to do this.
Lung cancer, blood cancer,
bladder cancer,
bladder cancer, bladder cancer, and lung cancer. They can be connected to pollution.
Research found that they are directly connected to air pollution. All the rest, it's not very clear. It's not known. The research is kind of blur because, it's hard to take out all the other factors from the research.
Be it smoking and whatnot, people,
Yes. But we know for sure that in Haifa there are more cancer cases than in other places in Israel, than other cities in Israel.
And
we know that the industry
bringing the point back
is
in
there.
Haifa, exactly. Haifa is a place in Israel where the industry lays, where you have a lot of, smoky, smoky industrial areas.
Yes.
But we know for sure now that 30% or more there are in Haifa.
Yes. Okay. And also, if you remember the Kishon case, this is also, it's not only air pollution, it's also water pollution.
Right.
The Kishon is a river that runs in Haifa, and soldiers from a really high level, profile unit, out of 120, 93 got cancer. A third of them died out of cancer, and they sued the army, scuba divers. They sued the army and Haifa and the industry, and they lost the case because they weren't able to prove that there is a direct connection between their cancer and the water pollution.
Right. And now, when we're looking at this case, for example, in Haifa right now, and exactly, it's the proof is, it's sadly to say, the proof is in the the proof would be in the pudding if they can make that correlation. But in a case like Haifa or worldwide, it's the potential for major class action lawsuits.
Yes.
Right.
That's why no one admits that there is a connection, out loud, because then everybody will be sued. The industry, the municipality, the health ministry, even the environmental ministry for not doing enough. Mm-hmm. It's like a major
so
thing.
In Haifa, what was the reaction to this? Was everybody blaming everybody?
I think. And the mayor said that it's, exaggeration, it's not true, because he wants people to come in. He's really investing in Haifa. There is a lot of development now there. He's calling for many young families, rich people. I was asking my husband yesterday, if we had an offer to move to Haifa, would this research change our minds?
Yeah.
And we're thinking about it, and yes, it would. You don't want to risk your kids, and they're in a really big problem.
I grew up in Haifa, and every once in a while, when the winds came in the right direction, we would get a whiff. Smell, a really strong smell, and you always wonder.
And it makes me think of China. Have research done in China? Is there a correlation? I'm just, because if we're thinking of the most polluted places.
China and India are the most polluted countries. By the way, 80% of death caused by air pollution is in poor countries usually. Haifa is an exception because it's not a poor city. It's even, not high, but it's
it's not a third world country city
but most of the cases are in poor cities. China and Haifa and India. China is actually trying to change its course, and they're using new technologies, more solar panels. They're actually trying to do something about it because they realize that they're really paying a lot of money for all the health problems that it's caused, and for their reputation among the world, and they need tourism. So money plays the key element in solving this problem.
It's all about money.
It's all about money, don't we know it? Yes.
The World Health Organization actually declared air pollution as one of the most deadliest factors in our lives.
And yet nobody takes note, folks. Nobody takes note. But on this happy note, thank you, Netta Achito, for shedding such an important light on a very important issue. Ami, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
As you're here every day. Coming up next, important day here in Israel. Israel marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, while thousands march in Auschwitz. So we'll take a closer look on this very, very important historical day. But first, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is Thursday, April 16, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News.
You will ask me dates or something?
I will not ask you dates, but I will introduce you in a minute. And this was Sonia Gorfine. Sonia with us in studio. Sonia was born near Vilna 88 years ago. I'm introducing you to her because today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Sonia Gorfein, 88 years old, born in Vilna, and when the Germans entered her village around 1939, they rounded up all the men and shot them in the square, including Sonia's father. That was the first killing she experienced as a child of the Holocaust. She survived the war camp she was sent to during the war by painting greeting cards for the Nazi officers who managed the camp. After the war, she managed to find a way to Israel, got married, had 3 children and 5 grandchildren. And we are joined in studio by Sonia Gorfein. And Sonia, I'm very, very grateful to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. It has been 70 years. But I want to hear from you to begin with. The Holocaust for you, how old were you when it ended?
When it ended, I was not 18, near to 18.
Near 20. How many family members did you lose in the Holocaust?
I will tell you, I was one child, but if you are speaking about numbers, I have to make a count.
You lost your father?
Yes, I lost my father. And I was one child. My mother, she stayed alive. This is the near family, yes.
The near family. Now, your mother survived the Holocaust and...
Yes, in another lager.
In a lager.
Afterwards.
Where did you spend the war? You spent the war in a lager, in a war camp, right?
Yes. Yes, I began to make my career of painting in the lager.
In the war camp. And I want to explain to our viewers, when you say that you began your career in the war camp, that means that you were a child, you were a young child, and you actually suggested to the German officers that you paint greeting cards for them.
Yes. Yes. I went to one posten and I knew German language. And I asked him, do you want some bird cards for the holiday? Ja, he told me, kannst du welche machen?
Can you please make some? Yeah.
Can you do it? And I had always with me some things to paint. Yeah, I can paint for you. So she took me straight in a room, in the other side, and gave me paper and tell me, so, okay, then make me cards for how to send it to German.
Greeting cards.
Greeting cards. So I begin my career by the German. It was the beginning. Afterwards, things changed, yes, and we went in many lagers. The work was finished, and we went in other lagers.
In other work camps. But it is the paintings that in many stories that were, in stories that were written about you, it's the paintings of the greeting cards
yes.
that in many ways kept you alive, because the German officers that you painted for got you better food sometimes and managed to keep you a little bit away from the harder work, which is,
yes.
insanity in itself. But you kept painting. You kept painting, and you paint for memory, right?
Yes, it's from memory. Yeah, this is from memory. But I saw the people, because afterwards we were in Stutthof. In Stutthof were masses of people, yes. And as a woman, I was between women. So you see, it's always women, not men.
It's always women. And you paint today, you paint the people that were with you, that you remember.
Yes, yes, I'm painting. I see the old picture not everything extra.
No, not what happened in the Holocaust. Did you paint them as they were before?
Yes.
Hoping that other people will remember. Sonia, I want us to, just a little looking at the pictures that you're painting. It's pictures of basically people you remember before the Holocaust that did not survive it, that you're keeping their memory alive by your paintings.
Yes,
by your paintings.
Because it was a book. He was made in Warsaw. That Jewish families, they were prepared to go out from the house. The German told them they will take him. And they took the pictures of the family and brought to the Christian neighbors and told them, look, if somebody is coming maybe from America or another country and asking about us, and we are no more alive, or maybe in another place, but no more alive was more sure.
More sure.
Here you have other pictures, and let them
give them to the people
give it to the people. And so many Christians got pictures of the Jews who didn't come back anymore. After the war, the Christians didn't have what to do
with the pictures.
With the pictures. They took them together and they went to Warsaw. In Warsaw, they made from it a book with address and name and everything of everyone. And this book came to one manager of art in Israel. He got it as a present from a student, one student she had. And this book I got if I want to paint. And so the faces in this book
are all of real people.
Are all real people
that
which
did not make it. Yeah, that did not make it, that did not make it out of the Holocaust. It's heartbreaking to see these, these paintings of actual pictures of all the people that you knew. Did you know any of these?
I don't know the people.
You just wanted to maintain their memory with, with your colors.
This is a famous picture. I forgot the name of her.
Yeah.
You can take piece by piece.
No, piece by piece, and we're looking at it. Sonia, you are 88. You're one of 189,000 Holocaust survivors that live in Israel, and sadly, because the year is 2015.
Yes.
We are losing so many of you. And memory being a very, very important thing when it comes to the Holocaust, as you do so well with your pictures. But it's maintaining the memory that can come in the strongest way only from people like you. We have a short report about how difficult it is to maintain the memory of the Holocaust, and I'm glad that you're with us here in studio. I would like for us to take a look at this report about people who survived the Holocaust and try to move that and try to pass that, the information and the memory along. Let's take a look.
Albert Gary was born in Paris in 1938 at the start of World War II. Before his second birthday, the Germans had invaded, and he went into hiding with his family.
My mother would take my sister and me, and we would go to the back room, and she would hush me like that, say, "Don't say a word."
Now 76, Gary still clearly remembers the liberation of Paris.
We saw the tanks, the jeeps, the soldiers with friendly faces, giving chewing gum, giving cigarettes. That was one of the most wonderful moments in my life, actually.
Sharing his story is second nature to Gary, who is one of about 60 active survivor volunteers at the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. They give tours, translate documents, and talk with visitors. But with the youngest of them in their 70s, the opportunity to hear firsthand accounts could soon fade away.
That's a fact of life. We're not going to be immortal. Someday, maybe in 20 years from now, there will be no survivors, that's for sure. So we have to live with that And that's why it's so important to pass the message to the next generations.
Museum administrators are also concerned.
I think both the museum and the survivors feel a sense of urgency, an urgency to make sure that we've documented as many Holocaust stories as we can. The museum is in a race against time.
More than 7,000 prisoners were liberated from Auschwitz in January 1945, but only around 300 attended the commemoration this year in Poland. At the museum, the construction of a new facility to house artifacts will begin this spring, and while time poses some problems, for volunteer translator Rita Rubenstein, making it to 78 is a victory in itself.
I'm here, and he didn't succeed in what he wanted to do. He wanted to kill all the Jews and all the traces of the Jews. I have a wonderful family. I have 3 children and 8 grandchildren, and that's my revenge to Hitler.
When the last survivors have gone, it will be up to their families and institutions like the Holocaust Museum to keep their voices alive.
Speaking of memory, and as we saw in the report, Sonia Gorfein's still with us in studio. And Sonia, we just told you a story about surviving the Holocaust by, in many ways by painting greeting cards for Nazi officer at the lager at the work camp that you were at. But after you survived, you painted not just pictures of people that you saw in pictures that did not survive the Holocaust, but also these, and I'm going to hold this up now. For example, this is one of your paintings, and, it may very, very striking. As we can see, this looks like a mass of people standing in front of a mass grave. I'm going to try and show another one here. Hold on one second. Don't worry, don't worry. It's happening well. And this is another one that I would like us to see. And this you painted from memory.
Yes.
All of this you painted from memory.
Yes.
This being, and you remember mass graves back in the work camp? Did you see the mass graves back in the work camp that you were at?
I see afterwards only the earth. I didn't see the open.
Yeah.
They didn't let anyone to go there and to look.
And when you paint these,
yes.
When you paint these, what comes to mind? What are the memories that you're trying?
It is what can I do? Which dark word you can find? What can you feel in this moment? This is in Hebrew is the word hara.
And we're gonna we're gonna quote that and amen to that. We're gonna quote that in the Hebrew. The word means very, very, very bad.
Yes.
But Sonia, you're an amazing, amazing survivor at the age of 88. And yes. Ami Kaufman is here with us. Ami, who he and I discuss news in the press every single day. We have very little time left, Ami. But Sonia, you are an amazing story of survival. But as I mentioned, 189,000 Holocaust survivors are living in Israel today.
Right.
And sadly, on this Remembrance Day, there is an important bit of information that we need to mention. We're going to start with one headline that you brought us today.
Yeah, just one headline that every year the Foundation for the Benefit of Holocaust Victims puts out a report about the situation, the financial situation of Holocaust survivors. There are 45,000 Holocaust survivors in Israel that are living below the poverty line today, out of those 189,000 that you mentioned. I'll just read a few more of the facts. 4 out of 10 survivors have found that their finances do not allow them to live in dignity. 2/3 indicate that they are very or fairly troubled over their financial future. That's an increase of 7% from 2014. 27% of survivors indicated that they're not able to afford to heat their homes over the winter. And nearly 3/4 said that they suffer from various health problems. 1/5 state that they feel unsafe in their homes. 45% indicate that they experience frequent loneliness, despite 6 out of 10 meeting with family members weekly.
And the bulk of them, though, I would say, I think it's safe to say that the bulk of the Holocaust survivors living in Israel today, and luckily for you, Sonia, you're not one of them, but the bulk of them are below the poverty line.
Bulk of them are under the poverty line.
Or under the poverty line.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this is a terrible day, a sad day to remember what happened 70 years ago. And I can only wish that possibly, you know, next year, for those survivors remaining in Israel, remaining alive, that are still alive in Israel, that their conditions are bettered. And I'm sure, Sonia, that you would like to see the same thing.
Yes, thank you.
For all of you living here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do stay with us. When we get back, we're going to take a closer look at several ways the younger generation are trying to remember what families, what members, what Jews, what their families went through during the Holocaust. Of course, first let's go back to the morning headlines, and we'll be back shortly after. Good morning. It is still April 16th, 2015. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, a day that marks 70 years to the horrific events taking place in Europe, where 6 million Jews died. I do not need to give anybody the details of that, of the Holocaust, hopefully. Now, a sad fact revealed on this Holocaust Remembrance Day is that according to an annual report released by the Cantor Center for the Study of Contemporary European Jewry at Tel Aviv University and released yesterday, the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day, Jewish communities around the world faced an explosion of hatred last year, with the number of violent anti-Semitic attacks rising by 38% compared to the previous year. And we are joined in studio by the director of the Israeli Students Combating Anti-Semitism, Ido Daniel. Ido, good morning to you. We're going to take a closer look at this story. And firstly, just when I'm looking at these numbers, 38% compared to previous year. Anti-Semitic violent attacks all around the world. What type of attacks, Ido?
We're talking about a variety of attacks. It can be insulting someone on the street because he wears a skull cap, a yarmulke. It can be also online. People should consider this as well as an attack because, and this is what we do in the ISCA, Israeli Students Combating Anti-Semitism, we refer to attacks online as an actual attack against an individual, a racist attack, an anti-Semitic attack. And this is something that should be addressed as well in those reports, and it is addressed.
No, in the report states that is the reasoning. I don't want to say the reasoning. The causes to this rise of hatred is traced back to what?
The cause. Well,
I'm not just saying anti-Semitism. I'm saying, is it easier to hate Jews because of the internet? I'm trying to, simplify this in that way.
The internet makes everything easier. Yeah. It's easier to just sit at your home. You will be the keyboard bully and just harass people. Cyberbullying against children is the same thing. So when it comes to racist slurs, it happens again and again. The internet makes everything much easier. If 10 years ago you needed some technical abilities in order to build a website, today Facebook allows you to just open up a Facebook page with a click and get your fans, and you can post whatever you want over there. Even if it's Nazi glorifying anti-Semitic hatred, Facebook will get to you eventually because we report it to them. But it's much, much easier, to your question.
No, much easier, sadly, as we call it, cyber anti-Semitism. On a day like this, I think, reports as such are very, very important because anti-Semitism is not gone, as we know. And, events that happened 70 years ago in Europe, sadly, resonating today digitally, but they're also resonating today, specifically on this Remembrance Day, all around Israel, marking in remembrance ceremonies that hopefully, will make people remember and combat situations as you just described, Ido. And today in Israel, specifically, for example, Yad Vashem, one of the most, if not, the place that people in the country associate with the remembrance of the Holocaust, is marking the day today. We're joined by I-24 News' Merav Savir, who is at Yad Vashem and will be following the memorials and the ceremonies there throughout the day today. Merav, what is expected today in Yad Vashem?
Well, Yael, as you said, there are ceremonies being held throughout the country, but these at Yad Vashem are the central ones and the ones that are most well known. The first one was last night at 8 o'clock, and that was the lighting of the six flames symbolizing the 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust. Today at 10 o'clock, the second ceremony will begin with a siren that will sound throughout the country, and then it will proceed with the laying of the wreaths at the feet of these six flames. We are expecting government members to be attending. Now, what has happened this year is because of the weather, they decided this morning to move this ceremony from the outdoor venue to a more intimate one indoors, so the rain will not harm the ceremony itself. And yet, I heard you were talking about these different forms that came out and different things during the week, specifically about anti-Semitism. Well, another one that came out was about nearly 50% of Holocaust survivors fear that the next generations will not remember and will not know the Holocaust once they are gone. And I believe the numbers are now that approximately 40 Holocaust survivors die on a daily basis. So the question is, after this 70-year mark where they are getting to the 80s and mid-80s and are more and more disappearing, and we may well have the very last Holocaust survivor in the next 10 to 20 years, is how will these next generations remember without the first-hand account? And that's something that Yad Vashem has been doing throughout the years, and we'll try and speak with them about what they will do continuing on for the generations that come after us to remember the horrific events.
No, Mirav Savir, very, very valid points as you're standing there in Yad Vashem. Thank you for joining us. You will be with I-24 News all day today, covering the events in Yad Vashem. And, you know, we do actually, you know, this, on the flip side of this, and, you know, the internet makes it easier to hate people, and not just Jews. The internet makes it easier to hate people.
Hate everyone.
To hate everyone, exactly. We have to be specific about that. Yeah. But it also, as Mirav mentioned, it does make it easier also to maintain and keep memories. And I think that's an important, valid point that we have to keep today. And speaking about memories, a lot has been said and written about the Holocaust symbols and the icons of memory. Everyone is familiar with the iconic images that symbolize the Holocaust. And Frank, for example, everybody knows the yellow stars of David and the Arbeit macht frei gates over Auschwitz, the entrance to Auschwitz concentration camp, are things that are etched in people's mind. And the historical and cultural context of symbols commonly associated with the Holocaust and the way in which the variety of iconic images, including personalities, artifacts, and texts, visuals convey awareness of an association with the Holocaust. It has been an inspiration, though, also for our next guest. Karen Gilliman succeeded in her photograph Past and Future in Our Hands to bridge the past with the future in an extraordinary blend of sensitivity and symbolism through the arms of Polish-born Auschwitz survivor Dora Dreiblatt, born in 1922, and her great-granddaughter Daniela Hal-Tzvi, born in 2007 in Israel. We are joined in studio by Karen. I'm very, very happy to have you here. And before we delve in how you came about to, you know, create this project, explain to me what the project itself is, first of all.
Hello.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
The project began when I was actually offered to take part in a competition for Israel's 60th Independence Day, while 60 photographers were offered to take the flag of Israel and give it some kind of symbolic expression. Right. I knew at that moment that this is my opportunity to bridge the generations of the Holocaust survivors and the future generations. So I took the arm of Dora Dreiblatt, who is actually grandmother of my best childhood friend, Yael, and I took the arm of the newborn baby, Daniela, and put them on the flag, and it won the competition.
No, I want us to put this picture up again for a minute and stay on it. If we can stay on that picture, it's a very iconic picture. If we can see that picture again, there we go. If we can see that picture again, that's an iconic picture of the number, you know, for viewers from overseas, that you can be seeing it also in the, you know, you can be seeing it in front of you, the tiny hand of the baby. And I think it encompasses, when you, first of all, when you did this, you know, how did you come about with this? You know, how did you dream up this picture?
I actually had this vision for a long time. Since I knew Yael from the age of 4 and I knew her grandmother, right. I knew I wanted to document and cherish and show actually this grandmother as a survivor. Not necessarily as a victim, but as a survivor that created 4 generations.
Created more life.
Created more life. I don't think that Dora, at the terrible times when she experienced the concentration camps, if she was told that she will get to the age of 87 with 4 great-grandchildren, she wouldn't believe it at the time. Right. And I wanted to cherish this moment and to show the future generations, bridge the generations. I was very happy that it received such a recognition and awareness. It became a stamp by the Israel Post and a poster by the State of Israel.
And have you taken that, and you've taken that work onwards to try and maintain, you know, other representations, I'm trying to think, of keeping the Holocaust alive? Such as, in what way?
Yes, all the time. Actually, this specific photograph is in very important collections. It is in the Tel Aviv Museum. Yeah. It's at Yad Vashem, at the President. And I keep on working on new ideas using this symbolic, historical. I'm very proud I managed to do...
And it's a valid point, and I'm thinking, and I'm glad also Ido is still with us in studio, because you deal with, you know, maybe how people confront or remember things online. In this day and age, and that's first a question to you, Karen, because the iconography of memory, and there's always a danger that people, maybe not the Jews living in Israel, because it's so etched in the education, the memory of the Holocaust, but the people around the world become, and there's no other way of putting it, slightly tired of the images that they know, such as the little kid holding his hands up that we all know, such as, and what I'm trying to think is, how do we, as be it photographers and artists, how do you think one can keep the memory alive by bringing it forth in a modern way? It's a horrible thing to think of. In a modern, but one has to. In a modern way, so newer generations that will not have the benefit of having Holocaust survivors that you and I know, because we're second generation, because those people sadly will not be alive. How do we maintain that in this day and age?
It's very important to maintain it. Through my image, I portray optimism, hope, and remembrance. And speaking of how to make it more modern. In a way, actually nowadays, my son, who is in the 6th grade, I escort him every month with his class in Ramat Aviv Gimel school to meet old age people, Holocaust survivors, and listen to their own personal stories. They document the stories and they learn from it. Afterwards, they go and learn about the Second World War and about Poland and about Germany. I mean, we mustn't forget those Holocaust survivors are getting poorer, weaker, lonelier, and unfortunately lesser and lesser. And this is so important to remember, cherish, and pass it on to the future generations.
Pass it on. And Ido, I'm thinking out loud with you when it comes to the reports that you bring out of the Cantor institution, because if we say that hatred online, you know, that hatred in the digital world is easier today, is it easier, but it's also, isn't it easier also to remember? Is there something the institution does to, you know, put forth anything, and a digital representation to actually, you know, help combat the hatred with information?
Yes, and it's well known. It's not a strategy. It's something that we do. Thinking about strategy, something that you do in order to counter something, and but it has some. It sounds like something that out of a war or something. But we do it also because what is counter speech? Counter speech is something that you upload from yourself in order to combat hatred. It doesn't mean that you, well, we do it as well. We lower the levels of hate online with taking down Facebook posts and Twitter posts that are anti-Semitic. They call for murder of Jews. This is things that we see all the time. But we also do positive things. We also do things for commemoration of the Holocaust and raising awareness to a problem. And it is a problem because anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial is not just a Jewish problem. Let's put the things on the table. It's a global problem.
Definitely.
Racism is racism is racism. Anti-Semitism is a manifestation of racism, and it should be combated as all forms of racism.
No, it's all forms of racism. And then when you say that, when the things that you do online, not just as a strategy, I agree with you. A strategy is a word that you know, sounds like something out of a, you know,
manual or something,
an annual something, but you know, give me an example. Online is something that is done to combat the hate. How can that be done?
I can note the good cooperation that we have with social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Those social media outlets have become a hub for hatred. And we work with them together in order for them to understand what is anti-Semitism and what should not be on their servers.
What should not be said. What you do not put in a status, for example. I'm simplifying.
One of the most significant things initiated is the International Holocaust Memorial Day, which also spreads it worldwide and very, very important.
In terms of keeping it alive, and as we conclude, also I think it's images as yours, Karen, that bring it forth to this day and age, be it the young woman's hand, the baby's hand on an old woman's hand, which, as I said, I don't want to use the word modernize, but make it real today, and keep that memory alive. Karen and Ido, I want to thank you very much for being with us today. As we mentioned, it is Holocaust Remembrance Day, as marked today in Israel, as will be marked in ceremonies around the country. I-24 News will be bringing you live reports from those ceremonies, so do stay with us. And now, of course, stay with the channels for an update on the news. And thank you for being with us today.